Cool, welcome to this session. This is the penultimate session, which I guess means it's a bit like a music festival where you have that set on the main stage just as the sun is going down and it all gets really, really magical. So I'm going to try and take that as my influence and we're going to put that at that sort of level. So, I'm Piers. Welcome. This is actually my first time standing on a stage, certainly in an Amsterdam setting for YeurLeadin. And I've got a title of working with leaders, or leading leaders and working with volunteers. And collectively, everybody here today is actually leading a group of leaders. It's actually something I started about 20 years ago. I realised that at the time I was a sole trader, I was working freelance, and I was really struggling to get the kind of traction and get the kind of attention that I wanted. And I realised that I could do a lot more if I was part of a group. So I actually set one up, totally unrelated. It was involving photography, if that was what I was doing at the time. And I learned a lot doing that. I learned a lot about people, about their career aspirations. And something that sort of stayed with me as I've gone through in my own career. I actually work in learning and development. I work with coaching, or as a coach. And work to help other people develop themselves in a variety of ways. And alongside that, I've maintained my relationship with volunteer groups. I work on a regular basis as a volunteer, and now I actually work as a driving instructor, or driving trainer, let's say, on a monthly basis. But the question that came out, and the question that actually I was invited to address today, was, is working with volunteers different? And if so, in what way? And there generally was a feeling that I picked up over time that in a volunteer capacity, things are a little bit different. Everybody's got a similar kind of day role, doing different things during that role. What is it that makes that difference? What are the things that get carried across from your organisational experience that do make it into the volunteer experience, and maybe other things that don't get transferred across? The kind of things that we thought about were these things. We've got focus, we've got hierarchy, decision making. Some of these things you might not miss, you might actually be glad to get rid of as you move into a volunteer role. But other things actually can be quite useful. And by losing them, is there maybe some opportunity in the volunteer group, and certainly in the leading of a volunteer group, to bring some of those back in? Now, these titles came through from a few conversations that I had with a number of people involved, not just in the Salesforce realm or in my own experience of volunteering, but I put out a little bit of a conversation with a few people outside of this. And one of the things that came apparent is that I needed to get a little bit more information to go a little bit deeper. So I actually put out a survey. I put it out first of all through Twitter, so I got a general set of responses, and I put it out again, thank you, it came through the Salesforce community leaders there. So if anybody filled that in, thank you very much for doing so. Your information has fed through into this talk. So what did I find? Well, I'm not going to baffle you with lots and lots of graphs, but I am going to bring up one. And it was the first one. It's simply how many groups are people involved with. And the thing that I found quite staggering was just a few people were only involved in a single group, plenty are involved in a couple. Nearly half of the people who responded to this survey through Salesforce, through the community group channel that we used, are actually involved with 3 or more groups. So can I quickly get a show of hands? How many of you here today are involved in 3 or more community groups? So we've got a...
Leading 3 or more, or just...
Involved in any capacity. Involved in any capacity with 3 or more voluntary groups. That's pretty much everybody in this room. Can I go a little bit further? How many of you got to 4 groups? 5? 5 groups? Wow, yeah. And I think that in itself is quite impressive, and it really goes to show that there's a lot of benefit and perceived benefit of the groups that you are involved in. So, subsequent questions that I asked what do people like? What was their best thing about volunteering? And they came up with these ideas. These were the top ones that came through. So a sense of giving something back, helping others. These are the kind of things that I might have expected, but I think what really stood out for me was that it's giving something back. There's already an experience that everybody here has had that is then trying to pass on to others. So it's also, you know already that what you're doing is good, is beneficial, and that the groups that you're working with are now building upon that. So I think that's really, really important. That sense of community came out very strongly as well. That not only are you looking to give something back, but you're actually wanting to be involved in the community groups that you are part of. And I think that again is something to be celebrated. The networking, but also the teaching and mentoring. And that was something that was quite interesting, because I think that also shows that there's a recognition that collectively there's a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience here in this room, in the community groups, in the leadership of those groups, and it's wanting to have that shared. So I think that's really, really useful. I want to bring in a quote at this point from Simon Sinek. Leadership requires two things: a vision of the world that does not yet exist, and the ability to communicate it. And I think that's something that as a group and as a group leadership, that really asks the question of what it is that you are looking to do. What would you like your group to do? What's the purpose of it? And there are variations that you will find out of this. And yesterday we even brought out a specific example. A goal without a plan is just a dream. And I wanted to build upon that. In Salesforce, V2 Mom. Is everybody familiar with V2 Mom?
Yeah.
Do I need to put you on the spot and ask you to tell me what V2 Mom stands for?
Vision, values, measures, obstacles, and I've
You are so good, but I think you need some help. Someone help them out?
Mission and then the measures at the end.
Thank you. So, okay. From your group's point of view, how many of you revisited this recently? Yeah. So that was positive. I like that, and I trust you on that one. Yes. It's a good start. Thank you. For today, I want you to take a variation of that. I want you to bring it back to V2 me. Okay? So, what is your personal vision within your group? Just think about that for a moment. You've all got a piece of paper, so I would like you to take a moment. Think about what it is that you personally want to do within your group. Okay, so what is your personal vision? Jot that down for me, please. On that paper, I'll give you a couple of moments to do that. Now, once you've provided your own personal vision, I'd like you to add underneath that, what do you see as your personal values? I'm going to give you up to 3. 3 values, so 3 key things that you stand for, that actually help you in the way that you think, the way that you act. What are the core values that are important to you? So please pop those down.
Unrelated to the group, right?
Let's say related to the group, but do you know what? As people, we tend to find the same things crop up, so if it's easier, go outside. No. Looks like you've completed those. Now, I'd like to share those with the group. And the way I'd like you to do that is please take the piece of paper that you have just written on, screw it into a ball.
Yeah.
Screw it into a ball, please.
No one's going to read this.
We'll see.
Yay! I like
Once you've screwed it into a ball, hold that in your hand. And on the count of 3, I'm going to ask you to throw it at me. So, 1, you're keen. 2, 3. Thank you very much. We've got some food for thought here, so give me a moment and let's see.
See, I told you.
My vision within my group. Showing the knowledge and the meeting moment. And the values, social, friendly, and generosity. Yeah, thank you. It's okay. Okay, thank you. Sorry, thank you. So I'm going to find another one here. Create an ecosystem for Salesforce devs in Luxembourg. Knowledge transfer, sense of community, and enablement with values open-minded, integrity, and honesty. Thank you for that. I'll just pick one more. My personal vision, to build my knowledge and confidence through networking. The values of integrity, loyalty, and reliability. These are really, really good stuff. This is the stuff that makes these groups happen. Because it's the individual motivation that actually encourages you to turn up, to do things, to get stuff done. So this stuff is really, really important. I'm going to make sure that these are available, so if you want to dip in, if you want to try and find your own again, feel free to do so, but also if you want to have a look at each other's, I think that's really good, really powerful way of sharing that. So thank you. Now that was started out by what we liked most within the groups. I had to ask the partner question of what do people like least within the groups? And from that, I did get different responses. What do people like least? Now, fortunately, the last one here, not applicable. I think that was really key. This was one of the things that stood out to me was, do you know what, when people are saying what they like least, that one came out. But there were some others in there. Favouritism, cliques, lack of organisation, poor communication, internal politics. So a number of these topics that rose, and these were the popular ones, or I say the least popular ones. The good news is that we actually know where to start. The less good news is that this is a start. So my suggestion for you is not necessarily that this is something that I can fix here and now, today, but actually these are really great places for you to start with the conversations within your group. Was that no? No, sorry. Okay. So, I want to just share with you how you can actually go about making changes. If there's something that you don't like within those groups, and it's this. It's borrowed from Stephen Covey, and he talks about the circle of concern. In other words, what are the things that are around us, what are the things that are happening in life that we don't like, that bother us one way or another? Now, potentially that is anything, but in many cases we have no control over it. So our circle of concern extends to things like the weather. I can't control the weather. It might bother me in some way, but if I find that something is continuously bothering me, and the phrase that springs to mind here is, if I'm banging my head against a brick wall, keep in mind that if I do keep banging my head against a brick wall, all I will achieve is gaining a headache. Because at some point I need to let go of the things that I cannot control. So on the inside of this is my circle of control. These are things I genuinely do control. I can control my own actions. I can control, to a degree, my own beliefs. With practice, and we talked about this earlier, thank you, you can actually build upon this of what can I control within myself. There's still a gap, though, from my circle of control to my circle of concern. So there's something still to come here. And that's my circle of influence. In other words, the things that I cannot control, but what I do does play a part in influencing them. And typically that is other people. The way that I work with other people, I can't control somebody else. But I can influence them. So the way that I behave, my attitude, my actual behaviours, will affect that other person. It will affect their attitude in return, and in return that is likely to influence their behaviours. So effectively I get that sort of reciprocal reaction there, or relationship. And that can be really helpful. That enables me to lead by example. If you see somebody leading in a particular way, you're more likely to follow that behaviour. It doesn't always work that way. I'm going to give you an example of when it doesn't. Cupcakes. Now I happen to know that as a group, as a population here, there's quite a lot of passion for cupcakes. So I would like you to imagine that you have a cupcake now. It's not just any cupcake, it's an amazing cupcake. Do you know the sort of amazing cupcake? It's got slightly too much icing, and it's sitting there, it's on your desk. If it helps, just imagine there's a cup of tea, a mug of coffee, just by the side. And you are sitting at your desk with this cupcake, and the first thing that you do is out comes the smartphone, click, Twitter, hashtag cupcake. I know, because my feed erupts when this happens. But at the same time, I walk over to you. I pick up the cupcake, bite into it, didn't even unwrap it. Your face, your expression, for the thought that goes through your mind at this point, if you're a fan of Game of Thrones, Dracarys. And I'm just standing there, really nice, I like this one. So there's often an unintended consequence to the actions that we do, the way that we behave. So there are times when what we think we like and the way that we think we want to behave, because it suits us, sometimes actually has an effect on other people, which is not the one we intended. Okay. Now, if you think back to the topics that I mentioned that had room for improvement there was a common theme in that, and it's communication. One way or another, most of those things stem back to communication. Now, I'm going to give you a hint here, or a tip. Suggesting that a team needs to improve its communication is a little bit like saying a business needs to improve or needs to make more money. In itself, it's actually too general to be useful. I need to get a little bit deeper into this. So, I will suggest to you, communicate with purpose. Yesterday, I'm going to pick out a couple of things that cropped up for me that really suggest communicating with purpose. We talked about the goals, but also was SMART. So we're familiar with SMART as an acronym. It's a nice way, a good way of giving yourself a checklist. I'm not going to say it's the only one. There are plenty of other versions of that and variations that will give us some way of actually providing that purpose to that communication. I'm going to also give you some examples that crop up in many cases that counter a tendency maybe within a voluntary group where people are not doing this as their main role, but it is a side interest that decisions are often slow to actually achieve. And one of the things that can be really helpful here is, are you getting stuck waiting for other people to make their decision known and to actually add to your suggestions? So for example, if you have that great idea and you want to go ahead with it, and you're actually asking people, hey, this is my idea, what do you think? Or this is my idea, can I go ahead with it? At which point, if your organisation, your group is very busy with other things, you're often waiting on somebody else to then respond. If you turn that around and turn it into, I've got this great idea, I would like to go ahead, let me know if there is a problem by Friday. I've now given an opportunity for you to raise your concerns so that it's clear, and if it's not, if I don't hear back from you, then I know that I can go ahead with that. Now, in turn, I may need to set some boundaries. If I take the example of petty cash, I may be able to say, I can spend up to £10 without even bothering anybody else. Up to £100, I can presume that it's okay for me to do it, but I will keep you informed. And over £100, I will go the other way and I'll say it needs to have the agreement of the group. So there's a way of doing that. So I've got an option there to be clearer with my communication. Of course, it also comes back to the internal communication within the group. How many of you talk with each other, your colleagues, your other fellow leaders, about how they are leading the group? Does anybody have that kind of conversation?
Today?
Sorry, say it again.
How many of you are having a conversation with your fellow leaders about how you are each in turn contributing to the running of that group? So a few of you, it's about half roughly there. Okay. I'm going to bring in another quote from Brené Brown. clear is kind, unclear is unkind. I think when we get into this kind of realm of actually talking to other people about their performance, we are often a little bit reluctant to have a conversation that really gets to the heart of what that person is doing. Now, my first tip for you here is, if that is the case, and in fact I'll say even if it's not the case, be positive. Give praise. Praise somebody. That was great, that's amazing. The key to that, though, is why? What is it that you did that was amazing? You do an amazing job with your group. That's great. That feels nice, doesn't it? But what does it tell you to do next time? It's open. If I then go into more detail and provide you with, this is what you're doing well, then I've got an opportunity to carry on doing that. Okay. Now, if you read the book, and I thoroughly recommend that you do, Renee then goes on to say, we need to be brave. And the extreme example of being brave is actually to open ourselves up to being vulnerable. So when I've talked about feedback there, other people may describe it as having a candid conversation. She uses the phrase rumbling. That's not necessarily for you to be giving feedback to other people. It's an opportunity and an invitation for you to ask them to give you feedback. What is it that I'm doing? What am I doing well? What could I do better? And if you're brave enough and you're open to be vulnerable about that, you will grow, because you will hear the things that you like. I thoroughly recommend that. Okay. So, I'm going to come on to another quote, which I'd just like to end with. The leaders must spend a reasonable amount of time attending to fears and feelings, or squander an unreasonable amount of time trying to manage ineffective and unproductive behaviour. We are people. We are these warm, complicated, slightly strange at times, squishy things. And we're not